Hey, this is David for Big Bits, and welcome to this video on understanding the exponential moving average. Now, the exponential moving average is very similar to a simple moving average, except it moves much quicker. So for example, when price kind of changes direction, for example, when going down to moving back up here, its moving average moves a little bit quicker because the candles or the price at the most recent time is weighted more heavily than the price in the back. Whereas with a simple moving average, all of the prices in the look back period are all weighted exactly the same. Now, we'll get into the calculation in just a moment, but I do want to show you how this line does differ from the simple moving average of the same time frame or the same look back period. So this EMA example that we're using, the blue line is using a 12 period EMA, which means it's looking back 12 periods to calculate its current exponential moving average. And you can see the blue line, its values. Then we're going to do the same thing, but I'm going to show you now a 12 period simple moving average. Okay, so you can see here when the price started to go down, the blue line moved down quicker. That's because with the exponential moving average, the values are weighted more heavily on the most recent candles. Now, similarly, when the price started to go back up, the EMA also moved quicker back up than the simple moving average, and it continued to do so. And by now, I think you kind of get the point. The exponential moving average just moves quicker than the simple moving average. Now, as far as doing an exponential moving average on TradingView, it's very simple. It has a built-in function. You can just call the EMA using the closing price of the candle and the periods back, and you just plot that on the screen. That's our blue line. Now I'm going to hide this. I'm going to actually show you a couple of different EMAs. We have the 12 period SMA. We're going to actually use a 12 period EMA on the green line, and then we're also going to be showing you the 26 period EMA, which these are pretty common exponential moving averages to use, and we'll go over a little bit of that in just a moment. Now, I showed you how TradingView uses its built-in function when you plot it on the screen for the exponential moving average, but it does actually use a more complicated mathematical formula than the simple moving average, of course, because we have to weight the most recent candles more heavily, and we'll get into that in just a moment. I just wanted you to see the difference between the SMA and the EMA first on the chart and explain to you why that's the case. So let's actually get into kind of some more information. As we did in the last video with the simple moving average, we're going to go over the exponential moving average on Investopedia, and if we find other resources later in other videos, we might use other sources. So if you haven't seen the simple moving average video, then I suggest you go back and do that so you can kind of understand some of the concepts we're doing here if you don't kind of pick up on what's going on. So the exponential moving average, and they say pretty much the same thing I've been telling you, that it places a greater weight, thus a greater significance on the most recent data points. So the same thing as we've been saying, the most recent candles are weighted more heavily. That's all that is. And they have some key takeaways. The EMA is a moving average. Okay, we already covered that. More weight, more significance on the most recent data. Like all moving averages, this technical indicator is used to produce buy and sell signals based on crossovers and divergences from the historical average. And this is similar to the simple moving average, but we didn't also talk about divergences as much with the simple moving average. Now, traders often use several different EMA days, for instance 20-day, 30-day, 90-day, and 200-day moving averages with their exponential moving average. Now, as far as calculating the exponential moving average, this basically just tells us how they weight it more heavily. And you'll notice that you actually have to calculate the simple moving average first. And you'll notice it doesn't reference the simple moving average again in the calculation. So I'll explain to you why in just a moment. You have to do this simple moving average first. Now, you also have to do a multiplier, which does the smoothing for the moving average. And to do that, you just take 2 and divide that by your look back period plus 1. So if we're doing a 12 period EMA, this would be 2 divided by 13. And the final step in calculating your exponential moving average is to take the current closing price, subtract the EMA from the previous period, and you multiply that times the multiplier that we calculated in step 2, and then you also add in the exponential moving average from the previous period. Now, you're probably still wondering why the simple moving average wasn't mentioned again, even though it made you calculate it in the first part. Well, the reason that is because going back throughout all of the chart history and going back through all of the candles, there is at one point no more history to go back. You're looking at the very first candle. And in order to calculate your very first exponential moving average, if you don't have an exponential moving average for the previous day, you're supposed to use the simple moving average of the same period. So for example, if we are doing an exponential moving average for the period of 12, on the 12th candle, we wouldn't have an exponential moving average on the 11th candle because there wasn't enough data. However, we are able to calculate a simple moving average because it doesn't rely on the existence of its value in the past. So essentially, you're seeding the EMA calculation with the simple moving average to start out with. And this is only on the very first candle that it calculates the EMA where it doesn't have an EMA value in the past. So that might be a little bit confusing. For the most part, you're never going to have to worry about the calculation. You mainly just need to remember that the most recent candles are weighted more heavily, and that's about all you need to know as far as the calculation. In other indicators, it's important to understand the calculation a bit more because it can have impacts on how the price changes. These tend to follow the price relatively closely. Well, at least the trend in the price relatively closely, so that you can get an idea of where things are going. Whereas with other indicators, it might be harder to tell, so it's better to understand the math for them. Here, you're probably fine if you don't really understand what's going on. But in case you wanted to know, we've went over it, and if you have any questions, please leave a comment in the comment section of the video, and I'll try to respond to you. Now, what does this tell you? A lot of people use the 12 and 26 day moving averages, and those are actually pretty important, and I'll tell you why in just a moment. They use these on intraday charts, but more importantly, they're used to calculate other indicators, and that's why I've chosen to go over the simple moving average in our first video and the exponential moving average in our second video, because a lot of other indicators use the simple moving average or the exponential moving average or other moving averages to calculate their own values. So the simple moving average, or just any moving average, is very important to kind of understand how other indicators work as well. And to prove that point, the 12 and the 26 period exponential moving average are used to calculate the moving average convergence divergence, better known as the MACD, and the percentage price oscillator. And then people also use this similarly to the simple moving average with 50 and 200 period EMAs signaling longer term trends. We also have, of course, we've talked about the trends. We also have some other things here. They look at trading within the intraday market. So, for example, we're looking at the chart here on 5 minutes, and we're using the exponential moving averages and comparing those here. But if you look on the daily chart, you can see that the exponential moving average is moving up. So if you were still within this particular day and you were trading and you zoomed into the chart to look at the 5 minute candles, if the exponential moving average of the entire day was still moving up, you would use that to help yourself try to place longs or to go long and buy in this particular case when you get the signals throughout the day. So that's what they kind of mean by that. You would use the longer term trend within the shorter term trend to help you have a bias on which direction you think the price would go. So if price is trending up throughout the last 50 days, then it's likely throughout today it's a good idea to go long. At least that's what this is saying. And of course, that doesn't always happen. So please keep that in mind. And that about covers it for the exponential moving average. In the next videos, we're going to go over some more indicators. We're going to be talking about some more moving averages, and hopefully we'll also get into covering the MACD, which consumes the exponential moving averages to calculate its own values, and you can get an idea of how the exponential moving averages calculated within that will impact its values going forward. So I hope you appreciate this video. If you do, please leave a like. If you like these videos and you'd like to see more, please hit subscribe. If you have any questions or comments, or would like to see any indicators of your own idea that you would like to see described or explained on this channel, please also leave a comment on the comment section of the video. But if you're curious on any of the coding that we're doing, I showed you how we would plot that with code back here on the chart. If you're interested in any of this and making your own indicators, I have a video series entirely dedicated to making your own indicators, and you can find that on my channel as well. Otherwise, you can check out my TradingView profile, and you can find a bunch of the indicators that I've created as well, including the moving averages that we used to display some of the information earlier. But that's all for this particular video. I'd like to thank you and have a nice day.